Hi, and a very warm welcome to the world of insects. We all know that humans or the mankind, this is just one part of all the living things that we have on Earth. If do you know that if insects were to wiped off and there is no insects, the humans will die in a few tens or hundreds of years. So the mankind would not even survive some 100 years. That's how important insects are. There are, of course, some insects which are really important to us. They help in flower pollinations, they help in transfers of energy, and so many things. But there are some insects which cause diseases to us. And in the recent decades, we have seen a secular trend in decline in the number of insects. The science which deals with the insects of public health importance, that is called as entomology. So as far as your MBBS curriculum is concerned, beta, these are the competencies that we are going to touch upon. In this particular video, we will talk about the role of vectors in causation of disease. We will also try to describe the identifying features and life cycle of some of the vectors of public health importance. So different vectors we are going to study in this video. We will talk about the mosquitoes, the ticks, mites, louse, fleas and flies and sandflies. So now let's get going and talk about some of the things in entomology. If you talk about entomology, that is the science of study of insects, we can talk about the class Insecta. We can have the class Arachnida, or we can have the class Crustacea. Crustacea. The example for this, I think most of you must be knowing. Class Insecta, we are going to talk about the mosquitoes. We are going to talk about the flies, the lice, the flea. All are like in class Insecta. The class Arachnida is what we have as the ticks or the mites. And in class Crustacea, we might study upon cyclops. So cyclops is actually not of any more public health importance because it is related to a disease, that is guinea worm disease, and it has been eradicated from India. So predominantly we are dealing with class Insecta and the class Arachnida. If just a little bit more detail, nothing very hi-fi in this. If you talk about the class Insecta, let's take a new page. If we talk about the class Insecta, the Arachnida and the class Crustacea, the Arachnida and Insecta. In class Insecta, the insects, they are more organized. They will have a head, a thorax, and abdomen. Whereas in Arachnida, they will have only abdomen and a cephalothorax. And in class Crustacea, again the same issue, abdomen and the cephalothorax. If you talk about the number of legs, that is kind of most important feature because that will build the base of how to identify the feature, how to identify different insects. Insecta, class Insecta will have 3 pair of legs. Arachnida will have 4 pair of legs, and Crustacea will have, that is Cyclops, 5 pair of legs. 5 pair of legs. If you talk about the wings, again, something like many times they ask you this question, what about the wings? In wings, please note that class Insecta will have wings. I'm not saying they will fly. They all may fly, they all may not fly, but they will have the wings, and Arachnida has no wings and Crustacea will not have wings. Of course, common sense, if there are wings, where would you find the class Insecta? Where would you find what is the natural habitat? The class Insecta would, common sense, be found on land, and Arachnida will again be found on land, and class Crustacea is in water. So that is kind of a brief introduction about what you are going to study. Next in line is important 3 by 5-star MCQ topic. What are the modes of transmission? We have already discussed much in detail about this topic, modes of transmission, when we talked about the infectious disease epidemiology. But just a very quick, let's have a quick summary about it. What are the different modes of transmission when we are talking of vector per se? So if you talk about the different modes, first is we can have a direct mode of transmission. We can have a mechanical mode of transmission, or we can have a biological mode of transmission. Direct means the organism or the vector. The organism is there with the vector and the vector is going to drop it there. So it's a direct mode, by contact or by carrying the organism. Mechanical is like if the flies are there, they will transmit from stool or from feces. the infection is transmitted to human. So how does it happen? The fly does not take it inside. The fly will be having a mechanical mode of transmission, that is through the foot pad. That is through the foot pad, or that is the mechanical. They just carry it. And what is biological mode of transmission? This can be your 5-star MCQ topic. What is biological mode of transmission? The biological mode of transmission, beta, can be of 3 types. We can have propagated, cyclopropagative, cyclodevelopmental. Let's have a look. If you talk about this vector, in this vector, if there is one microorganism and many of the same type, they come out. So what is going to happen? What is the change that is going to be there in the organism when it passes through the vector? There is a change in what? Change in the shape or the size, or change in the number? Common sense, you can see over here, there is a change in number. Beta, if there is a change in number, what is it known as? What is it known as? It is called as propagative transmission. Propagative transmission. Please note, it is called as propagative transmission. When do you call it? When there is change in number. Now let us say another scenario we can take is, this is the vector. One microorganism enters the vector and only one will come out in a different shape. So what is there? Is there a change in number? Answer is no. There is only change in shape. So if there is change in shape or size or development of the developmental stage of the microorganism is changed, that is called as a cyclo. There is a cyclical change in the development. That is called as a cyclodevelopmental transmission. So all are types of the biological mode of transmission. We can have a propagative or we can have a cyclodevelopmental. Cyclodevelopmental means change in shape. Propagative means change in number. There could be a third scenario, beta, that let us say this is the vector and there is one microorganism coming in and all different shapes and sizes will come out. So what is going to happen over here? There is a change in what? There is both a change in number and the change in shape. Beta, if there is a change in size or shape or stage plus there is a change in number. So now it is both of the things. That means there is a cyclical change and there is propagation. So common sense, it is called as a cyclopropagative mode of transmission. So beta, there could be a cyclodevelopmental mode of transmission where there is only development. There could be a cyclopropagative where there is both a change in shape or size and development, and there is a change in number. Next MCQ which examiner may ask you is, what are the examples? Typical example for this, for the propagation. Please remember, P for propagative, P for plague. The typical example is plague bacilli in the rat flea. Next is cyclodevelopmental. One thing comes in and bigger thing comes out. Typical example is filariasis, lymphatic filariasis in Culex mosquito. It is a typical example of cyclodevelopmental change. And what do you mean by the cyclopropagative, where there is change in number and change in shape? I think everybody knows about the answer. What is the answer, beta? Gametocyte coming in and so many sporozoites coming out. Answer is malaria. So malaria is a typical example. The Plasmodium falciparum in Anopheles mosquito, that is a typical example for cyclopropagative mode of transmission. So I think these are a couple of basic things you should be knowing before we enter into this whole game of entomology. Let us talk about the first thing, that is the mosquitoes. Mosquitoes. How many types of mosquitoes do you know? There could be different types. There are some mosquitoes which will fly and you will not be able to catch them. They are very clever mosquitoes. Hai na? Many times you spend 2 hours while in the night when you are studying and you spend 2 hours in catching a mosquito. That mosquito you won't catch. And there are some foolish mosquito, you just hit like this and they die. There are some mosquito will cause that zzz buzzing sound. There are some mosquito which will fly and you won't even come to know. So different types of mosquitoes are there. Predominantly speaking, 2 families of mosquitoes are there. Machar, right? Mosquito. 2 families of the mosquitoes are there. We can have the Anopheline type of mosquito, or we can have the Culecine type of mosquito. The Anopheles mosquito has only one genus into it. That is the Anopheles mosquito. And the Culecine can be a Culex, or we can have the Aedes, or we can have the Mansonia mosquito. So predominantly, beta, from the medical point of view, from the entomology point of view, we need to study about these 4 types of mosquitoes: the Anopheles, Aedes, Culex, and Minsonia. So now let's get on and talk about each of these identifying features and what all MCQs you need to know about each of these mosquitoes. Beta, please note that whatever I am going to talk right now, everything will be a 5 by 5 star MCQ topic. But what you can do is you can make a single table in your copies. You can write down Anopheles and we will write down all the features under it. Then you can write down about the Culex mosquito. We will write down all the features. Then you can talk about the Aedes mosquito. We'll write down all features, and Mansonia in the last. You can divide in your copies the area accordingly. You make 4 columns and everything we are going to write down. So let's talk about the first mosquito type. What do you see over here? Beta, what you see over here is definitely a mosquito, right? The identifying features I have shown you, I have tried to show you in the picture over here. If you just look at the screen, you can see that this mosquito is there sitting in inclined position. Please note the word, whenever you get a mosquito in the inclined position, we are talking about the great Anopheles mosquito. Anopheles mosquito will always sit down in inclined position. Let's have some 5-star MCQ topics on Anopheles mosquito. The Anopheles mosquito, bache, please note that the Anopheles mosquito, what are the diseases which are caused by this mosquito? What is the public health importance? It is, we are talking of a dreaded disease, that is malaria. Do you know that the number of malaria deaths that happen in the whole world is the highest out of all the vector-borne disease deaths? So you can say that the most important insect, which is the killer of humans, is Anopheles mosquito, and that's why you get a lot of MCQs on Anopheles. Let's talk about next features, like what is the breeding place. What is the breeding place? Please note that all the mosquitoes, they will lay eggs in water. Mosquito needs water to replicate. So water is essential important thing that we have. So the breeding place for mosquito is a clean, stagnant water. It is a clean, stagnant water. What do you mean by a clean, stagnant water? These are the roadside water collections or some of the potholes which are there. So the water is typically clean and it is stagnant. What is the shape of the egg? Lot of times, shape of the egg. If you talk about the eggs, lot of times, 5-star MCQ topic. What is the shape of the egg? Please note that these eggs are single. They are single eggs and these are boat-shaped egg with lateral floats. So you can make a single table. You write down everything under this heading of Anopheles. Okay. So we are talking about the Anopheles mosquito, single boat-shaped egg with lateral floats. So you can see over here, can you see the egg over here? These are single eggs lying down here and there. And they have, if you talk about the lateral floats, this is the boat-shaped egg. And there will be kind of a transparent membrane over here, which is the lateral floats. So these eggs, the Anopheles egg, will always have boat-shaped eggs, which are single and they will have lateral floats. Next, typical features about the larva. Please note that the larva of Anopheles mosquito is very typical. If this is the water surface, the larva, because the egg is there in the water. So if this is the water surface, the larva of the Anopheles mosquito is just below the surface of water. So if you just look at the water, the Anopheles larva is just below this surface of water. So just below the surface of water, the mosquito can easily come up, take air and then come back. So this is called as a surface feeder. It is called as a surface feeder because it is just near to the surface of water. Please write it down. It is near to surface of water. So please write down what is the larva. Larva is a surface feeder. It is a surface feeder. What do you mean by a surface feeder? Just near to the surface. Now talking about the adult mosquito. Now talking about the adult mosquito. So egg is there, larva is there and the adult is there. What is the typical biting time of this Anopheles mosquito? Please note that the typical biting time, the biting time of the Anopheles mosquito is typical morning and evening time. It is morning and evening time, and that is the reason this mosquito is typically called as the dawn to dusk biter. It is called as the dawn to dusk. Dawn means early morning, dusk means early evening. So it is a dawn to dusk biter and it bites relatively during the whole day, but the peak biting time Peak is during the dawn and during the dusk. That is the peak biting time. Point number 1. Point number 2, where does this adult mosquito sit? Does it live inside the house or outside the house? Please note, it is a typically exophilic mosquito. What do you mean by exophilic? Outside the house. How is the bite of this Anopheles mosquito? Is it stingy? Is it painful? Is it nothing? What do you want to say? Please note that the Anopheles mosquito bite is relatively, compared to the other bites, it is relatively less painful. There is less pain with the Anopheles bite. Point number 4, how about the resting position of this mosquito? How does it rest? I've already told you the resting can be asked a lot of times, and this is in fact one of the most characteristic feature of the Anopheles mosquito. The resting is always with head down. So this mosquito will always sit with head down position. Point number 5. Point number 5 with this mosquito, what is the flight range? What is the flight range of this mosquito? It can travel for roughly approximately 2 to 3 kilometers. It can fly 2 to 3 kilometers. So that is the flight range. And last point for your exam, you can remember, what is the special feature? What is the special feature that I like to ask the students in the exam, in the Viva exam? What is the characteristic feature of an adult mosquito? That is, there are spots on wings. Spots on wings, that is important characteristic. So if you just have a look at this Anopheles mosquito, so that's the way I have remembered. I'm just sharing the way that I have remembered, beta. You can memorize that the Anopheles mosquito, right? Machar, Anopheles mosquito. It's a very cool dude mosquito. That's how I have remembered. The cool dudes, they'll be sitting in which water? Clean water. The cool dude people, they'll do boating in which water? You do boating in a clean water. You don't do boating in a dirty, polluted water, right? You do boating in a clean water, and you usually try to stay afloat with the lateral floats, and you are along with the surface, right? It's a cool dude mosquito, and the cool dudes will usually have less painful bite. They won't touch you a lot, right? And they'll bite you in the morning, evening. They'll bite you and they'll go back. That's all. They take it easy, right? And they'll always sit down in a very humble position, very head down position. The head is always down, humble, namaskar position. So the flight range is 2 to 3 kilometers, and the special feature is they are beautiful people, right? Spots on the wings. And you can see that humble mosquito, head down mosquito, painless bite, morning, evening biting, and they are doing boating in clean area. What I have remembered is this mosquito, I have remembered it as a highly sophisticated mosquito, and it is called as a sophisticated mosquito. It's a cool dude mosquito. You can just remember it that way, right? That's just the way of remembering. With one word, you can remember everything. Like cool dudes or sophisticated people, they'll do boating in clean water. They'll be surface feeders, and they'll have this biting time peculiarity, and the sitting posture will always be namaskar position. Let's have a look at this another type of mosquito. Can you see it's not in the inclined position? So a lot of times they'll ask you question like this, is this inclined? So common sense, this mosquito has a relatively stable type. So this mosquito has a stable, it is parallel to ground. It is parallel to ground. What is this mosquito? This mosquito will be called as Aedes mosquito. This is not an Anopheles mosquito. An Anopheles mosquito is always inclined. It is always inclined. It is a landing position. We also call this position as a, where did we write? We call this as a landing position or inclined position, right? So what is this Aedes mosquito? Let's get back to the Aedes one. Aedes mosquito will always be parallel to ground. Let's have a couple of MCQs, a few MCQs on Aedes mosquito. But our first MCQ, what is the disease which is transmitted by the Aedes mosquito? The disease we all know is the dengue fever. In Hindi, we say dengue. In English, we say dengue. Dengue fever, or we can talk about the, maybe, like it's not there in India, but at least it's there somewhere in the world, that is yellow fever. Please note that yellow fever also is predominantly transmitted by the Aedes mosquito, but dengue fever is technically there. And along with dengue, you will have chikungunya. Chikungunya. disease, right? So dengue, chikungunya, yellow fever, they can be transmitted by the Aedes mosquito. What is the typical water or the breeding place? What do you want to write down here, beta? What is the breeding place of this water, of this mosquito? The breeding place is typically for Anopheles, remember, clean stagnant water. For Aedes, it is artificial stored water. It is artificial stored water. So what do you mean by artificial stored water? The household water, the water in the cooler, the water in flower pots, the water we have, rich people, they'll have very fancy idea of having a gamla, having a pot, and below that they'll keep a tray. So you pour water, and in the tray there'll be a lot of water collection, and you have water collection. That means more Aedes. And also, rich people, they'll have the fountain inside their homes. So that's a beautiful thing to have a fountain, but then you'll have dengue as well, because the mosquito does not know about rich and poor. So the artificial stored water could be the water in fountains and flower pots and coolers. All these are artificial. And of course, you already know the water collection during rain in the coconut shells and the rooftop things. All these are artificial stored water. Moving next, what about the egg? Can you see the egg over here? The eggs are singles or clusters. Common sense, it is single egg. And these are called as cigar shape egg. These are called as cigar shape egg. What is the shape of Anopheles? Boat shape egg. Next is, what about the larva? What is the larva? Please note that if we talk about the larva for Aedes mosquito, the larva is kind of lower inside the water. It is kind of lower inside the water. So where was the Anopheles larva? The Anopheles larva was near the surface. Now that's the problem with the Aedes larva. The Aedes larva is below the surface of the water. It is towards the bottom side. So how does the larva breathe air? Can it take it from the water, or does it need to go to the surface to take air? What do you want to say? Please note that the larvas are not fish. They will not have the gills. So how can they take air from the water? They need the oxygen supply from the air only, right? So this larva, poor fellow who's down below, if it needs oxygen from the air, poor fellow will have to climb up and take oxygen and then come down, because it lives down. So by the time it comes down, it's again out of air. So again it will go up, so it will die doing like this. So God helped it out. God said, I will give you a tube to breathe. What is the tube called? This tube is called as MCQ. It is called as a siphon tube. Was there a siphon in the Anopheles mosquito? No, there was no siphon in the Anopheles mosquito. Is there a siphon in the Aedes mosquito? Yes, there is a siphon in the Aedes mosquito. So the larva for Aedes will have a siphon, and the larvae are called as bottom feeders. The Anopheles mosquito larva was called as surface feeders. The larva in Aedes is called as a bottom feeder, and because it's a bottom feeder, there is a siphon tube which is present. What is a siphon tube? That is, you must have seen snorkeling. Have you ever heard of snorkel? Snorkeling is when you go inside the water. In Andaman, you have beautiful snorkeling areas, right? You see corals and so many things. So you have that snorkel, that is a respiratory tube. So God gave the snorkel to the Aedes mosquito, remember it? That is the siphon, that is the respiratory tube. Next in line, let's talk about the adult mosquito for the Aedes. What are the features of the adult mosquito? When is the peak biting time? When is the peak biting time for the Aedes mosquito? You must have seen advertisements in TV that maid will come and say that I want 400 rupees extra for cleaning your house. Why? Because there is a mosquito behind the curtain. And the maid will come in during daytime, right? So obviously, common sense, the biting time of Aedes mosquito is when? The advertisement tells you it is during the daytime. Now MCQ wala is very clever. They will not ask you like daytime means what? 8 to 4, 9 to 5, 10 to 6. What do you want to say daytime? Is it the office hours of the Aedes mosquito? Answer is no. The daytime of the Aedes mosquito means, write it down very in beautiful golden letters, write it down. This could be beta your prospective MCQ. This could be bache your prospective MCQ. Write it down. Daytime means 2 hours after sunrise, 2 hours after sunrise, and 2 hours before sunset. 2 hours before sunset is the peak biting time of the Aedes mosquito. Where does it live? Point number 1 was biting time. Point number 2 is what is the natural habitat? Is it endophilic? Is it exophilic? Within the house, outside the house? Just now we discussed that ad, right? The maid will ask you extra money. Why? Because the mosquito is there inside the house. It is predominantly endophilic. It is usually under the table. It is where I am sitting on the chair. The Aedes mosquito could be there somewhere hanging around. It is usually resting on the walls also. So on the wall also, if you see a mosquito, it's very difficult to rest on a wall. It's not a lizard, right? Lizards will climb the wall because they have suction pads. How can a mosquito sit like this? So flies can sit like that. So an Aedes mosquito will sit on the walls. They'll be under the table, ulta. They'll be hanging upside down. So an Aedes mosquito is a typical mosquito which is hiding inside the house endophilic. Third point. What is the flight range of this mosquito? If you talk about the flight range of this mosquito lives inside the house. You don't have big kilometers houses. We normally will have few yards of houses, right? So the flight range of this mosquito is relatively less. It is only 100 to 200 meters. Next is, if we talk how's the bite of this mosquito has it has a kind of a painful bite. It has a kind of a painful bite that it will bite you and you will come to know about that something is biting me. If you try to shoo it off, it will not fly. It will sit on your skin, it will bite you till the time of death. So it is not going to fly. It's a very hard going mosquito. It's a survivor mosquito. Fifth is it's a painful bite. And this mosquito, what is the flight range we have done? What is the resting posture? The resting position of this mosquito, you have already seen. Just now we saw this thing only. It is sitting down as parallel to ground. It sits down as parallel to ground. If you ask me one specific high yield, sixth point, what is the special feature? What is the special feature of the Aedes mosquito? This Aedes mosquito, you can see over here, it will have stripes on the body. The Aedes mosquito, the typical special feature is stripes on body. Many mosquitoes will have stripes on the leg. This mosquito will have the stripes on the legs also, and it will have stripes on the body also. That is the distinguishing feature from other types of mosquito, right? So this is the mosquito which usually will take time to, it's a very fast going mosquito because the wings are very small, right? Because it has to travel short distances, so it has a very high kind of higher acceleration rate, and it's difficult to catch these mosquitoes. That is the Aedes mosquitoes. So bache, if you just see this Aedes mosquito with one word, that's how I have remembered. Please note that if you just have a look at the Aedes mosquito, please don't mind my language over here, but that's how I have learned and I have remembered. If I just want to remember Aedes, this Aedes mosquito will, I start from here. This Aedes mosquito will live where? What is the habitat? This Aedes mosquito will share my bedroom. This Aedes mosquito will share my bedroom. It shares my house. And in my bedroom, it will drink the water that I drink. That is the artificial stored water. This mosquito will do cigarette smoking in my house. This mosquito will do cigarette smoking in my house, and this mosquito will cause a very painful bite, and it bites you during daytime because it shares the bedroom. And this mosquito, I told you, it will keep on biting till the time to death. So this mosquito is a very aggressive type of mosquito. It will be sitting parallel to ground. That is something like this. So it is doing yoga in front of me. So this mosquito, you can remember that this mosquito will drink your water. It will share your bedroom. It will do cigarette smoking in front of you. This mosquito will do yoga in front of you. It will bite you very hard. And this mosquito is having stripes on the body. I call this mosquito, like that's my personal choice. I call this mosquito as a very shameless mosquito. It shares my bedroom with me. It's a shameless mosquito. And because it bites you till death, this is a fearless mosquito. And because tigers are fearless, and also because it has stripes on the body, this mosquito, I have remembered it as a tiger mosquito. Tigers are shameless, fearless, and tiger mosquito will have stripes on the body. It will share the bedroom with me. It will drink my water. It will do cigarette smoking, do all the bad things. So it's a shameless thing. Just remember it this way. It's easy to remember, right? So you have the Anopheles mosquito, which is the sophisticated mosquito, and there you go with the Aedes mosquito. What do you think about this cute little mosquito? What do you think about this young-looking, brownish-looking mosquito, which kind of resting parallel, but actually it's not very parallel to the ground. But what do you think about this mosquito? See, if you look at this mosquito, mosquito has a typical resting position. Can you see that the head is down? The head is down, and then there is a neck which is on top, and then the body is again like this. So this mosquito has a very absurd kind of position. It is called as a hunchback position. It is called as a hunchback resting pose because the neck is like with a hunch. So this hunchback resting pose is typical for which mosquito? I think many of you must be answering it right now. It is the Culex mosquito. It is the Culex mosquito. Let's have a few words, MCQ, about the Culex mosquito. What are the diseases the Culex mosquito will cause? Culex mosquito may cause Japanese encephalitis. Very important, है ना? Japanese encephalitis and lymphatic filariasis. Lymphatic filariasis. What about the water or the breeding place? What is about the breeding place or the water for Culex mosquito? Please note that the breeding place is a dirty, polluted water. Please note, for Aedes mosquito, artificial stored water, which is a very clean water. Anopheles mosquito, clean stagnant water, and Culex is dirty, polluted water. So you remember I told you to make a single table somewhere, and now you are writing about the Culex mosquito. You have already written about the Aedes and the Anopheles. Let's write down about the Culex now. So Culex mosquito, it breeds in a dirty, polluted water. What about the egg of this mosquito? Can you see the eggs of this mosquito? Can you see the shape of the eggs? This egg is always in clusters. C for Culex, C for cluster. C for Culex, C for cluster. Please note, it is always in clusters, and in clusters it is in rafts. We say that it is in rafts, that there will be sheet of eggs. In simple English word, it means sheets of egg, beta. So there will be sheets of eggs for this Culex mosquito. The eggs are laid in rafts, and please note they always are in clusters. Next is, what about the larva? If you talk about the larva, nothing very special. It's the same answer that you have in the Aedes mosquito. Did you see about the Aedes before? We talked about this image before. That was, I showed it for the Aedes. It's the same image that you have for the Culex also. Please note that Culex is a bottom feeder, and Culex mosquito larva will have the siphon. So the larva is below the surface and it has a siphon. You can remember it, that the larva is again same answer as the Aedes. It's a bottom feeder and it has the siphon. What is siphon? It's a respiratory tube. Next is, let's have a few words about the adult of the Culex mosquito. How about the adult? Can you see this mosquito over here? In all the different mosquitoes I made them, you could have seen them. They are typically more blackish. And you can see the Aedes over here, it's kind of more black. And you can see the Culex over here, which is more brown. So please note that if we talk about the adult mosquito for Culex mosquito, the adult, it's more of a brownish mosquito. Brownish mosquito for adult Culex. Next, let's talk about the MCQs now. What is the peak biting time? What is the biting time? See, Culex mosquito stays in which water? Dirty, polluted water. So humans will be away from dirty, polluted water. Please note that the peak biting time is during the midnight. Peak biting time is during the midnight. Next MCQ. What is the, is it endophilic or exophilic? Please note that it is usually exophilic because it stays in dirty, polluted water, exophilic, but predominantly endophilic during the night time. So during night time or nocturnal time, it is endophilic. Baki pura in the whole day, it is free to roam anywhere. What do you think about the flight range of this mosquito? The flight range of this mosquito, humans lived near to the dirty water? Of course not. Humans would be living away from the dirty water. What do you think about the flight range? Will it be less or small or bigger? It will be much higher flight range because it has to cross a lot of distances. Can you believe it is 11 to 13 kilometers? Even it can cross cities. So the Culex mosquito will have a longer flight range. How's the bite pattern? Is it a painful, non-painful? We usually say that this cute little mosquito will have a very burning bite. It is causing a stingy bite. It has a stingy bites. So some of the bites will cause a lot of irritation because a lot of chemicals are being put inside, and it's a stingy kind of bite. And the flight range is pretty long, 11 to 13 kilometers. How's the sitting posture? We already had a word on this. How does this mosquito sit down? It sits down in a very absurd position, right? So the head is there, down, and the tail is also down, but inside, in between, it's kind of up. This is a hunchback position. This is a hunchback position for the sitting posture. So how many points we are done? We are done 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Last point number 6, what is the special feature that you would always look for identifying in a Culex mosquito? It's a kind of a big bee mosquito. It's a lot of bees are there. You've already learned it's a brown looking mosquito. How about the body? Is it big or small? What do you consider this body? Is it a big mosquito or a small? Please note it's the small mosquito. It has the body is small. Please note it has small body. And how about the wings? What do you think about the wings? Will the wing be big or small? What do you think about the wings? Please note that this mosquito has to cross 11 to 13 kilometers. The international flights, they'll have bigger wings or smaller wings. Common sense. This mosquito will have big wings. Please note this mosquito will have small body, bigger wings, and that's the reason it can cross 11 to 13 kilometers. Now just imagine that if a mosquito will have big wings and a small body, it will do a lot of flapping. Don't you think this mosquito will cause buzzing? Don't you think that this mosquito will cause a lot of buzzing? Why? Because a lot of flaps will be there. So this mosquito, you can see there are a lot of bees over here. It is a brown color, small body, big wings and a buzzer mosquito. These are the special identifying features of this mosquito. If you just remember it with one word, beta, that's how I have remembered again. Don't mind my language, but that's how it is. This mosquito, I have remembered it's doing all dirty things. It stays in which water? It stays in which water? You can see it stays in the dirty water, dirty polluted water. Don't answer sewage over here. Eh? Sewage is for flies. The Culex mosquito will like to live in dirty polluted water. Can you give me an example of dirty polluted water? That is, the dirty polluted water is like long standing water, which is there usually in the villages. You'll have that water with a lot of dirt over it, a lot of algae planktons and things over there. And this water can also be the water in the paddy fields, dirty polluted water, or sometimes we can say that less amount of contamination. Some amount of contamination can be there, fecal contamination also. But technically it's a dirty polluted water. So this mosquito, if you can just remember it with one word, it's a dirty polluted water doing rafting. Rafting. See, boating you do in clean water. Rafting is something which is rough. So rafting you do in a dirty polluted water. And if you look at this mosquito, when will it bite you? It bites you when mostly people are sleeping. In the midnight, people will be sleeping. So this mosquito will bite you in the midnight and it will cause you so much stingy bite. And it causes a lot of buzzing in your ear. Bzzz, and it will cause you a lot of stingy bite. Whole night you are awake because of this mosquito. And this mosquito will cross a lot of distances and it bites you in midnight. Dirty polluted water. Remember, this mosquito is a nuisance mosquito. Why a nuisance? Because it is a nuisance in the night. Because it bites you during the midnight. So you can just remember it this way, and it's also sitting down in a very absurd position. It's a nuisance way to sit down. So it is a nuisance mosquito biting you in the midnight, stingy bite, buzzing around in the midnight. You can remember this for Culex mosquito. Let's move ahead to the fourth one. What do you see over here? This mosquito is a typically large body and it will have long legs. It will have a long leg and this mosquito will have a large body. These are kind of huge mosquitoes. Aedes is also a huge mosquito. Mansonia, these are the Mansonia mosquito. The Mansonia mosquitoes are also huge. Very less MCQs come on Mansonia because it's not of so much public health importance. But yes, you should know a little bit features about Mansonia. In general, if I just want to show you that what is Mansonia, you can remember Mansonia is equal to the Anopheles thing. Whatever is there in Anopheles, beta, almost the same thing is there in Mansonia, except from some typical features. Let's have a word on Mansonia. If you talk about Mansonia, what are the diseases it is responsible for? It is responsible for lymphatic filariasis. So it is both lymphatic filariasis could be transmitted by Culex and the Mansonia both. What is the breeding place, beta? Breeding place for this mosquito is a large water body. It's a large water body with aquatic vegetations. It is a large water body with aquatic vegetations. What do you mean by large water body? And don't answer that sea or ocean. These are large water bodies. They are very large. Mosquito cannot cross ocean. Hai na? It cannot go from India to Japan. So mosquitoes, large water body means lakes or ponds. These are large for a mosquito. And aquatic vegetations means where there are plants. The MCQ which can be asked to you about the large water body and aquatic vegetation is that what aquatic vegetations we are talking of. Please note that on the screen that you can see is something called as the water cabbage. So these are the water cabbages. These are called as the Pistia plant. Pistia plant. And then you can also have the water hyacinths. These are the water hyacinth. Right? So these are the water hyacinths, and these are the typical aquatic vegetations which can be associated with Mansonia mosquito, more amount of breeding. What about the eggs of this mosquito? The eggs of this mosquito have a very typical characteristic. Can you see the eggs over here? The eggs over here, they are so beautifully arranged. They are not in sheets. This is not everything in sheets. You remember the Culex was laying eggs in sheets. This egg is not in sheets. It's like clustered on the top, like the birthday balloon we have, you know. You have a birthday balloon, you bind all the balloons together. So they'll become like, you bind it here and they'll become like this. So it's a very beautiful cluster of the eggs which are star-shaped. Star-shaped cluster of the eggs. So that's how we just say about the Mansonia. It's a star-shaped cluster of the eggs. And this is clustering of the eggs. Please note that till now you have learned that Aedes is single, Anopheles is single, Culex is cluster, Mansonia is also cluster of the eggs. How about the larva? The larva of this mosquito is pretty clever. Look at the screen over here. Let us say that this is the water surface and there is a water hyacinth or some water cabbage plant and the roots are hanging like this, normal, hai na? In the water, the plants will hang like this. These are the water plants. That is the Pistia plant, the water hyacinth. Now the larva of this Mansonia mosquito is so clever, it will go and look at the screen. It will go and attach to the roots of the plant, and through the roots of the plant it is going to breathe air. Isn't that such a wonderful and a beautiful phenomena what God has built? So the Mansonia mosquito is going to attach to the roots. How will it attach? Via a siphon. So does it have a siphon? Yes. And through the roots, it is going to breathe air because that's how it is. And therefore, this mosquito is also called as a bottom feeder. Does it have a siphon? Yes. So it is a bottom feeder. Does it have a siphon? Yes. So there is a siphon. But the peculiar characteristic about Mansonia is it attached to the roots of the plants. That's such a beautiful phenomena. I like it a lot. And next is about the MCQs for the adult. How about the adult mosquito? Nothing very special. I told you it's similar to the Anopheles mosquito. If you talk about the adult Mansonia beta, adult Mansonia mosquito, what is the peak biting time? It's same answer as Anopheles. It's a morning and evening biter. What is the flight range? 2 to 3 kilometers. What is the resting posture? That's important. Resting posture. For an Anopheles mosquito, the resting posture is kind of a different. It has so long legs, so it usually has to squat like this. There is a squatting position. So we call it as a squatting position of resting posture or the squatting posture of the Mansonia mosquito. It has a relatively painless bite, but the peculiar feature is, please note, it has special feature. Special feature is that it has big body and long legs. It has a big body and long legs. That is a special feature of the Mansonia mosquito. Let's have a quick word about the Mansonia mosquito. Just look at the Mansonia mosquito. I have remembered it this way. This mosquito lives in what area? It lives in areas which have large water body with vegetations. What do you think about this? Is it a rural area or an urban area? What do you want to say? It's technically a rural area because in rural areas we have some lakes and ponds and things like this. So it is there in the rural areas, and in rural areas you sleep outside. When we go to our villages, you remember we sleep outside and we are under the stars. So I have remembered it, rural area, you see the stars, and the rural people will always be attached to the roots. They are the rural people, they are attached to the roots. This mosquito is sitting down in a squatting position, and rural people will usually have big body and they'll have long legs. So I have just remembered this mosquito as a rural mosquito. You can also remember this as a rural mosquito. It's just one word for us to remember these all the MCQs. So now, finally, we have covered all the 4 types of mosquito, and this is what your table should be looking like. We talked about just a very quick summary of beta. A lot of this is like 3 by 5 by 5 star MCQ topic. A lot of times you get question on this. If you talk about the Anopheles mosquito, Culex mosquito, Aedes mosquito, Mansonia mosquito, please note that the diseases which are caused, we talk about the water, the dirty polluted water, the clean stagnant artificial stored water, large water body. We talked about the egg, which is single and boat shaped, cluster and raft, single and cigar, cluster and raft, cluster and star shaped. Larva, we talked about surface feeders, and remaining are the bottom feeders. We also talk about the adult mosquitoes, the adult mosquito biting time of each of them, resting place, flight range. You remember that the Culex mosquito, it has the highest flight range. Resting position, we already talked. Please note, a lot of times they have asked you MCQ on this. The Anopheles mosquito is angled or inclined position. Special features, please note, long legs, big body, small body, big wings is Culex, and stripes on the legs and body is Aedes mosquito, and spots on the wing is Anopheles mosquito. So that actually covers most of your questions on mosquitoes and mosquito-borne diseases.
Hi guys, please subscribe my channels.